Good morning, everybody, and I'm sorry I'm running a little bit late today. Lots going on. I think I'd start with what's kind of breaking news today, the Inspector General's report on Secretary Hegseth's irresponsible use of signal phones on the strike that took place against Yemen a number of months back. Again, to refresh everybody's memory that may not have followed bits and pieces of this, we had aircraft carrier and other entities in the Eastern Mediterranean, many of them, frankly, home ported in Norfolk. We were striking against the Houthis in Yemen, and Secretary Hegseth gave out all of this information on an unsecure line using his private phone that included not only security officials but family members. I was outraged in the spring, called for an investigation. I'd heard from sailors' families in Norfolk who were frankly pissed off that their sons and daughters could have been put in harm's way. And again, so typical of this former Fox broadcaster, he tried to avoid responsibility or dance around it. Well, the Inspector General's come out and said the following conclusions. One, this was clearly classified information. Two, while the Secretary of Defense has the ability to declassify information, he made no indication at that time, or frankly even afterwards, that he went through any kind of declassification process. Again, somewhat similar to President Trump, that he must have imagined it, and somehow that makes it okay. But his initial comments that there was nothing classified here, clearly 100% wrong. It was classified. He didn't go through the formal process of declassification, and I think it was an embarrassment. And then, most importantly, his actions by doing this kind of unsecure call, and including family members and others, put our sailors in harm's way. And again, I called for the Secretary's removal in the spring. I think the Inspector General's report validates that even more. I'm going to be anxious to get back to Hampton Roads and hear from the sailors and their families what they think about this. But that's not where the story ends. We saw, through the summer, uniformed military, the general in charge of the NSA, the general in charge of the Defense Intelligence Agency fired for political reasons. We saw, the Secretary bring all of the military command to Quantico and lecture them on how to perform. And then we've seen the next crisis, and this is the bombing of the boats in the Caribbean. Again, from the Secretary, we've had 2 or 3 different stories. At first, he thumped his chest and said it was great that he watched this whole bombing incident take place. This was the initial bombing on September 2nd, where 12 people were on the boat. It came out subsequently that while he offered a order to kill them all, we don't know, was that verbal, was it written, changed and said, no foul here, no second strike, then changed his position and said, well, there was a second strike, but it was ordered by Admiral Bradley, who I will be meeting with today to try to get to the bottom of it. So we're clear. Are we putting, again, sailors in potentially legal jeopardy because the military rules of conflict and international law, you don't blow up people that are no longer combatants, even if you accept the fact that there could have been drugs on the boat. If they are in the water swimming, how are they still combatants? I'm going to try to press Admiral Bradley on that this afternoon. And I think what is really the rub here is that, as opposed to being this big tough guy that says the buck stops with me, whenever there's controversy, he tries to pawn it off on someone else. He's now saying he didn't see the whole video, it was responsibility of the Admiral, which is totally different than what he initially said. Again, this is one of those issues where if the administration had simply come clean with the unedited video from day one, this could have been cleared up. But I think what I presume will happen is there was questionable actions here, and I just don't think it's fair that they throw uniformed military under the bus as opposed to taking responsibility. And we've seen 2 or 3 different answers from the president. He didn't know, he did know. It is, again, symptomatic of this administration's national security, which is chaotic at best and downright making Americans less safe across the board. Sure, we'll get questions on that. I do want to just answer one other issue that was clearly predominant in the last number of weeks, seems to have faded a little bit, but we, the Democrats, still believe very strongly that we should not allow the Obamacare coverage subsidies to expire at the end of the year. We're hearing from Virginians every day, 24 million Americans overall that would lose these subsidies. I'm hearing from Virginia families all the time, families who are currently maybe paying, I think the average family about 65 years old that was maybe making 70 grand in Roanoke, paying about average of $600 or $700, $800 a month, could see their premiums go up by $1,000 a month in certain cases. That will be devastating. And it's not only devastating to those families, those Virginians directly, but it's also devastating if you've got traditional health insurance and you're suddenly throwing a whole lot of folks off of the exchanges and back into the emergency room. That's going to drive everybody's costs up, and those will be passed on to people with private insurance. And that's all before the second shoe falls, which is the Medicaid cuts that will take place more close to the end of next year. But it is a double whammy on health care. And when the president keeps saying there's no affordability crisis, well, he obviously has not been talking to Virginians who are going to see their health care rates go up dramatically. We'll have a vote on this next week. The Democrats will propose a simple extension of these subsidies, and if they want to come back and figure out how we can improve them, welcome to it. But you can't fix this with people are right now buying their health insurance. Unfortunately, I don't think we've seen any serious efforts from the administration or from my Republican colleagues. They've had now 10 plus years to try to come up with a health care alternative. They're batting zero. I think they're going to be batting zero next week. You always hope that they come to their senses and we end up with an extension that then we could figure out ways to improve the program. But I'm not very hopeful that will happen by next week. And consequently, what a whole lot of Virginians are going to have for the Christmas holiday is dramatically increased healthcare costs. They're going to put strain on them through next year, and many people will end up opting out of the marketplace and frankly going without health insurance at all, and they're going to end up showing up at emergency rooms that are already overburdened. So with those are some of the comments at the top. Why don't I go ahead and go to Valeria or others, and we'll answer some questions.
Senator, the first question is from Emma Brown with the Virginia Pilot.
Hey, Senator Warner. This is Emma Brown. I'm the military reporter at the Pilot. I am just curious what you're expecting to learn from your briefing with Mitch Bradley today, and what kinds of questions you still have for him about what happened in the Caribbean.
Well, I want to hear, was there 1 strike, 2 strikes? There's been some reports that were up to 4 strikes. I want to hear how many strikes. I want to hear under what orders was he operating from Secretary Hegseth? I mean, was there not the order to kill them all regardless? I want to hear from him on that subject. I want to hear and see the unedited video. And I want to see if there was a secondary strike, what threat was being posed. If you've got folks, that are in the water, how are they still a threat? Scrambling for their lives. And I'm not an expert on military law, but my understanding from every expert I've talked to, if you are killing folks that are in duress that are not trying to fight back, that's against international law. And why did that happen? And I've got also basic other questions. Most of the other boats that have been exploded have been usually less than 6 folks. So if they're drug boats, you want to put the minimum number of people on the boat and the maximum amount of drugs. This was a boat that was a speedboat that had 12 people on it. Were there really drugs on it or not? Did he have any validation and verification of that? This has been, again, chaotic policy at best and potentially violations of criminal law, international law at worst. And I have a lot of respect for Admiral Bradley. I've never met him, but I know him by reputation, and I hope and believe that he'll tell us the truth.
Thanks, Senator. The next question is from Noah Kim with WTKR.
Hey, this is
Noah, are you there?
This is this is Colt Rainstadt. Noah is my colleague. He's the one who signed up to speak today, but he was just signing up on my behalf. I do have a quick question for you regarding the military action or military presence down in the Caribbean. As you mentioned, we've got thousands of Norfolk-based sailors down there in the Caribbean. What are you hearing as far as what could be coming in the days and weeks ahead? And what would be your message to the families of those thousands of Norfolk-based sailors who are hearing all of this, wondering if their sons and daughters and family members are soon going to be engaged in a conflict in Venezuela?
Well, first of all, I think our sailors deserve a clear explanation that, for example, these strikes on the drug boats, one, are they drug boats? Two, are there narco traffickers on those boats? Three, if there are, why don't you interdict them and show the world rather than simply blowing up to make sure their sailors, their family members and loved ones, are not doing something that's inappropriate. I think we need to give them assurance of that. Secondarily, I can tell you, and as a member of the Gang of Eight, there's been no presidential directive on Venezuela. So is the president trying to cook up a conflict to try to take people's attention off of the affordability crisis? I don't know what the goal is. Let me acknowledge, the president of Venezuela is a bad guy. Maduro is a bad guy. We have not recognized his government as official for some time. And frankly, again, the Biden administration screwed up on this one because when the Venezuelan people voted to throw out Maduro, we didn't put enough pressure on the countries down there to get him out. But that's not a justification to suddenly put our troops in harm's way without either coming to Congress and asking for, in a sense, a declaration of war or approval, but to kind of simply keep ratcheting up the pressure. And the president continues to make these statements like, we're shutting down the airspace or we're going to start bombing. Listen, if he'd asked for any of that approval, I would know. I'm a member of the so-called Gang of Eight. He's made none of those requests. So we owe those families and we owe those sailors to make sure that they are not being led into armed conflict without the President of the United States explaining to the American people and without going to Congress. If he's saying we're at war with Venezuela, he needs to declare war. And he's taken no such actions. So those families need truth, they need clarity, and they need somebody that's going to be straight with them if we're taking our most valuable assets, the men and women who serve to protect our country, and potentially putting them in harm's way.
Senator, the next question is from Tom Fitzgerald with WTTG.
Senator, good morning. I've got a lot on our plate this morning, including this news from the FBI that apparently an arrest has been made in the January 6th pipe bombing incidents at DNC and RNC headquarters back on January 6th, 2021. There is some reporting this morning that the suspect is in custody and possibly from Virginia. With your proviso that we understand that you don't talk about things that go on in the Senate Intelligence Committee, could you at least, number one, give us your reaction to this news? Number two, this has been 5 years. How closely has the federal government been following this, and have people been giving up hope that this coast would have been closed?
Well, Tom, I literally heard about this as I was sitting down, so I don't have any additional information. We have not been briefed up on this. over these last few years. January 6th was an extraordinarily dangerous day. I was up here on the Capitol when the invaders and insurrectionists put the House and the Senate members, and frankly, Capitol Police as well, in harm's way. I think it was outrageous that the president offered a blanket pardon and tried to say no harm, no foul here. I do remember the reports that day of the pipe bombs at, I think it was both DNC and RNC, but I'm anxious to get the information, and I'll be back to folks as soon as I have. But literally, first thing I heard about it was Rachel told me as I just sat in the chair, so let me get you some information. But again, I guess the overarching, just the one overarching issue is.
Just generally.
Pardon me?
I was just wondering if I could follow just generally on the issue of domestic terrorism. How big of a threat is this? We don't talk about it as much.
It is still a threat. And that is what is so crazy about this administration. They're taking up to 45% of the FBI agents that are supposed to be doing counterterrorism or cybersecurity or sex crimes and taking them off those responsibilities and just simply adding their bodies to the immigration raids. That doesn't make Americans any safer. It makes us less safe. And it is the height of irresponsibility, as we've seen from whatever happened with the Afghan who shot those two guards from West Virginia. It happened in terms of we were luckily able to stop a terrorist incident that was going to take place in Michigan. We see now this case finally potentially being resolved. I'm anxious to get the details, but with this boiling political cauldron that oftentimes the president, I believe, adds to by his comments about his political opponents, the FBI should be doing its job. They shouldn't be doing ride-alongs on immigration raids. And boy, I hear this from the FBI folks virtually every day. Let us get back to preventing terrorists. Let us get back to preventing foreign malign influence in our elections, which, by the way, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who I equate with Pete Hegseth, has actually disbanded the Foreign Malign Influence Task Force. And all of the things that were set up in President Trump's first term, where he did a good job about keeping foreigners out of our elections, that's all being disbanded. This does not make America safer. And frankly, with elections coming up, whether they're foreign or homegrown, I am always worried that we could have actions take place, terrorist actions, domestic or otherwise.
Senator, the next question is from Marcus Schmidt with the Virginia Mercury.
Good morning, Senator. Just for clarification, in your statement from yesterday, you've argued that Secretary Hegseth endangered the lives of Virginia-based pilots aboard the Truman. Can you walk us through what specific operational risks you believe his actions created, and whether you think that any ongoing missions were compromised as a result?
Well, first of all, it's not just me saying that. It is now the Inspector General saying his actions potentially put pilots in harm's way. Don't believe me, believe the Inspector General. And it is so obvious on its face. I don't know if you've looked at the emails. They cite the time of when the strike would take place. They cite what were the targets. If the bad guys had gotten that information, and let's remember, the reason this all came to light was because they were so sloppy that they put a journalist on the signal chat. If the bad guys had been able to figure that out, and the Houthis did have missile defenses, and do have missile defenses, we could have lost pilots. So that is the kind of sloppy, misguided, and why I called for Pete Hegseth to be removed and be actually held accountable. We don't have evidence of additional actions, but I would argue the action that now is being viewed, whether it was actually legal or violated the rules of war, in terms of these strikes, at least this strike on September 2nd. And the fact, again, the buck doesn't stop with Pete Hegseth. He tries to throw uniformed military under the bus. I'm going to try to get those answers today from Admiral Bradley. But this is a pattern that worries, concerns me, and I think is irresponsible.
Just a very quick follow-up. What concrete steps do you believe the administration or Congress should take to ensure that this kind of classified information breach, as detailed in the report, can't happen again?
Well, it would start with congressional oversight. One of the most frustrating things of my whole time in Congress has been, and I've been more focused on the intelligence community than on DOD since my jurisdiction as chair and now vice chair of Intel. We've seen political firings of leaders. We've seen people who've got, we've seen individuals with intelligence covers where their identities need to be kept secret, identified to the public. We've seen, people fired willy-nilly for political reasons. And I have begged my Republican friends, hey, we got to push back on this. So far, they've been privately concerned but not willing to go public. Thank goodness the Armed Services Committee, at least on this strike in the Caribbean, has said we're going to get to the bottom of it. But we need to get to the bottom of all of this malfeasance, and the sooner the better, because until we do, until there's some level of accountability, I can't guarantee those families that their loved ones are as safe as they should be.
Senator, we have time for one really quick last question from Amy Knowles with the Virginia Dogwood.
Okay.
Hey, Senator Warner, thanks for taking our questions. I believe you're about to host some very special visitors in your office. So I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about the group of students coming today and why this Christmas tree tradition is
listen,
so
Amy, listen, it's like,
boy,
boy, oh boy, it's going to be, particularly this, with all going on today, valuable. We celebrate the holiday season in my office every year I've been in. We bring in a big Christmas tree. We have brought in a series of schools. I think it's one of the schools from Fairfax County this morning. Usually, elementary school kids, they bring homemade decorations, and they hang it on the tree. And oftentimes we get a TV coverage, so the kids get to maybe see themselves on TV later in the evening, and it's just a real feel-good moment. And boy, oh boy, I haven't been that much in the holiday spirit yet, and hopefully this action this morning will put me in the holiday spirit. And I love to have these young kids with all of their energy, enthusiasm, and kind of just wonderment about being in a Senate office and seeing a big tree and decorating it. It's going to be a much needed respite. So thanks, as always, Amy. Thanks for asking me a question that makes me smile.
Sir, that's all the time we have for today.
Thank you, everybody.